Hoboken Historical Museum. We're here today as part of our Something New Jersey poetry series, and you're going to hear some great poets today, but I want to tell you a few things about the museum first. Last week, I went to a film screening of this film called Ruth Stone's Vast Library of the Female Mind. Here's a postcard for it. Oh yeah, I guess I should mention, we are live streaming on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter right now. So all people watching virtually at home, hello from Hoboken. Anyway, getting back to what I was saying, this is the movie that was made by Nora Jacobson about the terrific poet Ruth Stone. And the reason I'm mentioning it, again, I'll show you the postcard of it, is because from April 3rd, is that today? Yeah. Yeah, it's through April 10th, you can watch this at Show and Tell Film Watch Ruth Stone. And it does cost $15 to watch it, but I guarantee you it's $15 well spent. And it's a documentary by Nora Jacobson about a terrific poet. And if you get a chance to watch it, you should. Again, I'm putting this up to the screen. So you could, that I don't know, it's probably a mess.
Go back a little. That's good.
Probably a mess.
Sorry.
Also, the Hoboken Historical Museum has been in full swing in many ways, and they've been doing an amazing job during this pandemic. One of the things that has been going on is there's a weekly series called Hoboken Talks, which is live on YouTube and Facebook, and it has like notable Hoboken people. I just watched the last episode. Actually, I watched it on Saturday with Bill Miller and Margot Singalisi. And it's definitely, just go on YouTube and you can see it. When it comes live on Thursday nights at 7, I believe. Yep. I sit with my phone in my hand so I can make comments on Facebook, but watch it on YouTube. And it's amazing. It's in the second season now, right?
Yeah, I think over a year of episodes.
Yeah, it's really well worth your time. But let me introduce myself. My name is Danny Schott. I'm the poet in residence of the museum. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And this series, we started like in 2013, then we took a hiatus for a little while. But it was sort of the brainchild of Teresa Carson and myself, and we did it in conjunction with New Jersey's, oh, I can never say these words, sesquicentennial or something like that. Oh, okay. That was 300 years, and I guess it was 2013, is that it? Something like that, 2014. Anyway, the idea of this is to present to the world terrific New Jersey poets, and that's what we're going to do today. And we got 3 terrific ones. I'll introduce them before they go up, each one individually. And part of what we do is we read a poem from a New Jersey poet that we really like or has been inspirational to us, and then we do our own thing. Okay, so I'm going to start the event with a poem by Teresa Carson. And like I said, Teresa Carson is a person who originated this idea along with me. Now I apologize because I have to put my reading glasses on. Thank you, Cabin Carey Press, for the small type on some of these books. But this comes from Teresa's book, Elegy for the Floater. And I chose this poem because it's quintessentially New Jersey, but also for another reason. Her father worked at Bendix, which was an aerospace manufacturer, at the same time my father did. So this poem made sense to me. It's called My Father's Wilderness. 8 months after I left home, 2 before my 16th birthday, Pop calls. Tweety Bird, let's go for a ride. I'm outside in minutes. He drives 35 in the left lane at Route 17. Drivers honk, yell as they pass. I slump and stay quiet because whatever I say might send him into a rage, and I don't want our time together ruined. He takes an unmarked exit, parks on the shoulder. I light a cigarette and follow him into an overgrown lot. There's Bendix. He points, but I can't see past weeds and trees. Proud of his job, making delicate instrumentation for warships, planes, rockets, he kept the box with his jeweler's drills and the Apollo patch NASA gave him in his top dresser drawer and showed them to me many times, but didn't invite any of us, not even Mom, to his retirement dinner. When I worked days, I ate lunch here and bird watched. We stood in knee-high buzzing weeds. Bugs flew in my face, cicadas clacking rose and broke above us. So all kinds of finches, sparrows, chickadees, red-winged blackbirds, cardinals nestled there one year. Woodpeckers drilled those holes, and once, only once, a red-tail watched me from that branch. A hawk in Teterboro, Tweety Bird. He must have lost his way. I want to tell him I miss seeing you every day. We reached the field's edge, a bulldozer's parked in a road section. My father stops. Over there was a mess of milkweed. The monarchs loved it. I light another cigarette and wonder how much longer we'll stay here and why he cares so much about those stupid birds. Keeps calling me Tweety Bird, that babyish name. Why he let Mom drive me out of our home. Didn't try to stop me from leaving. And worst of all, stood on her side in family court. On the way back, I stare out the side window. We don't talk, except twice he asks, "So, how are you doing?" "Fine," I answer both times. "Good," he says. "Good." Since he died, I've tried to find that place, but the road's changed, and a car wash stands on his lot. Teresa Carson, everybody. I love that poem so much for a few reasons. It's a young Teresa, 16-year-old Teresa, who I didn't really know. Let's get going with the poetry. We have three terrific poets here. We've only had 2 glasses of wine. Our first poet is Susan Justiniano, did I say it right? Also known as Rescue Poetix, who happens to be the first Puerto Rican woman poet laureate of Jersey City, New Jersey, who found her performance voice in Jersey City. In 2006, Rescue Poetix emerged as a professional artist business designed to meet artists' entrepreneurial, creative, and collaborative needs. And as a poet and artist, we have many needs. In addition to being a published and performing poet, Rescue Poetix has recorded over 50 original poems to music in English and Spanish, and is deeply immersed in the arts communities through collaborations, grant writing, event production, and actively working in a variety of capacities of several arts organizations in Jersey City, Oradell, Paterson, New Jersey, and private entities. In 2021, Rescue Poetix placed fourth in the NAMINJ Dara Axelrod Expressway Arts Poetry Contest with Food is Family, and had 3 poems published in the 2021 Boundless Anthology, published by Flower Song Press. She serves as the representative for Puerto Rico of the 2021 Grand Marshal class for the Jersey City West Indian American Caribbean American Carnival Association, and is listed in the Latino Book Review database of Latino poet laureates in the United States. She is the poet in residence, I should be able to pronounce that, for Walk by Public Art, founded by Catalina Aranguri, Jersey City, New Jersey. Susan also serves on the Hudson County Community College Poetry Collective as an advisor, collaborator, and event producer. She is also the regional leader for Free Mom Hugs New Jersey, Hudson County. She performs extensively throughout New Jersey and globally. For more info, visit www.rescuepoetix.com. Let's have a really good round of applause for Rescue Poetix.
Thank you for that beautiful introduction and that beautiful poem. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be here with everyone today, to see so many lovely faces that aren't glazed over by the digital world. You can be glazed over now because of the wine or anything else, that's good. But at least we're seeing them in person. So today I want to share a poem from my selected New Jersey poet, Rosa Alcalá. And the reason I chose her and this particular poem is because she's from Patterson originally. And this particular poem, she also writes in Spanish and English. She's an immigrant from, her family immigrated from Spain. And her poetry talks about heritage, it talks about experiences, being the first generation here from a family from another country. Although Puerto Rico is not another country and is part of the US, it gets treated that way. And a couple of my poems will express that. So this particular poem is called Heritage Speaker. What good is it to erect of absence a word like radiator, when we vents that expel heat as air? When I teach my daughter to speak and build a woman out of me, that is not her mother, but some propriety. A treason of simple subjects. I never had use in Spanish for the word barn. And then woke up and a horse was staring at me, Joe Brainerd. Softly pureed, cooled. This diction dumb is either tongue, but what's in a mother's warmth, if not her wit? Bernadette turns to me in the shower and says, motherhood is now fashionable among the girl poets. If so, I want my hat, a feather in it, Mallarmé's, as a matter of fact. And that is from Rosa Avkala. And that's particularly impactful for me. That's impactful because it gives you the different perspectives and the different ideas of what words are, how they are part of our lives, whether we mean them to be or not. Because words are very important for us. And that takes me into this next poem. And it talks of a similar perspective and a similar instance. Taste is the memory of the body. An instant recognition of a long ago trapping, experiences that shape perspective. Heartstrings tugged by nostalgia, a scent, a flavor, a texture, swirling long forgotten things our bodies remember. They recognize seasons through tastes of foods, connecting instantly, awakening sensations. Arroz con dulce. I don't know how to make it, but the moment that it touches my tongue, I remember the boxes of raisins, sticks of canela, tall, tall pots, stirred and stirred and stirred. Pernil, marinated in oil, vinegar, garlic, and herbs. The palate never forgets. Texture of buttery goodness, falling apart in my mouth. Coquito, spiked with rum, so that my sense of smell still captures the memories of the bottles that lined the counter. Liquid soldiers, reinforcements for long nights and laughter. Each season is different. Each season tastes different, unique in muscle memory, triggering goosebumps, smiles, people. The anticipation is palpable each and every time. When the winds change, carrying the tall ends of now, carrying it away, sweeping in the next inhaling of bodily feasts. I can almost taste spring. Thank you. This next piece I'm going to share with you is, the theme is New Jersey. So this talks about renewal and new, and since we're in spring, I thought it would be appropriate. I could extol the virtues of motherhood, tell of the wondrous ability to create life, praise the struggle of raising kids as a single parent, martyr this as my greatest accomplishment. I could hide my failures, asinine judgment calls, ass backwards decisions, the madness and chaos that followed, gloss it over, make it pretty. I could ignore the rage, having done so for years, runs in fishnet stockings worn over varicose veins. That skin. Parchment paper edges thin, it's time to cut it away, peel it back, and grow a new one. Over scars my last relationship pried open, just to watch the blood flow. The hardest thing isn't to let go. The hardest thing isn't to let go. The hardest thing isn't to let go. The hardest thing is to move on. Redefine who I am, where I stand, as I stand. Not defined by motherhood, children, work, career, job, or any other human being. At the mouth of change, I dare to look back. My shedding, scattered along on a path like breadcrumbs that I no longer travel. Maybe I like that. Today, I don't know how true that is. I do know that I have cut for me the need, the fear, the desire to return to the devil I know. Thank you. So these last couple of years, we've had a variety of different experiences with how we handle with what's been going on. But one thing I can say is probably a common thread is we spend a lot of time thinking of what have I done today, what have I accomplished today, what's going to happen, and it just goes, rolls and rolls, right? So for all of you who are like me, this one is counting sheep. Days at a fast, skimming along at a snap that would make anyone dizzy. Nights, I dream, would be hurried, restful, and smooth. It's a reoccurring dream. Moments to reflect on a world when life turned into hours. Sheep. 1. Did I tell my kids I love them? Ewes. 2. Did I smile more than frown? Lambs. 3. Did I do something good for me today? Baying. 4. Did I do something good for someone today? Baying. 5. Will I fall in love again? Some whole and solid 6. When? Others abstract. 7, 8, 9, 10. Who was that cute guy at the store? Just as I start to climb, that feeling crawls over my brain. The sheep stop their desperate hurl to greener pastures. The next night, some of them are so familiar I give them names. The new ones, the ones that try to push in under the fence, I push back. That's enough for tonight. Come back when these find a home. Thank you.
Remember, there's a camera there too for people who
Okay.
are watching live.
Hello, beautiful people. So this particular piece was accepted in publication to an online literary magazine called La Libreta, and this one's called Four Chambers. How vigilant the heart when love stains its face, warrior against pain's tyranny, rebellious and jealous, doubtful. Sincerest lover when in lust, sublime with honor when confounded by kindness, one and whole when mated with its likeness. Fickle when wronged, forgiving to a fault, endless in its quest of hope. How do four chambers make room for such awareness when there's space, and in their space they throb those bits of flesh and those rivers of red? How does one mass divide logic and emotion, creating a chaotic symbiosis where pain felt is disregarded in the face of what could be, in the slight inkling of forever? How does a fist-sized mass, and it's a bit of nothing, how does it get compelled? And how does it compel an entire being to pursue and peruse and pursue and peruse and persist and persist and persist with delightful madness, the trigger, to the possibility of falling from a cliff, shattering those bits? By what means does a shattered, beaten, and defeated hollowness become whole from one moment to the next, seared and filled with rhythmic contradictions, designed to move always forward? In what way does such a witless vessel of fluid become engorged with laughter in the face of despair? How does it maintain that laughter in the face of despair? How does it then keep when there is no sense to make of those disasters, one by one, one on top of the other, one next to the other, after another, and constant? How does it continue to have the ability to laugh? How then does it leave room for more in the wake of the waning light? In what manner does such a zealot, this little mass of nothing, determine the levels and nuances of love, each one unique, each one different? Love for you, and love for you, and love for me, and love for us. How then does the heart, how is it that in all things it blossoms from an unsustainable seed, buried in the only place it can grow, insatiable in its quest for belonging? Thank you. So next I'm going to share to you one of my favorites. And this is the one that submitted to NAMI, New Jersey, which is New Jersey National Association for Mental Illness in the New Jersey chapter. They have a strong belief, like most of us do, that poetry is healing. So they have a contest every year. And for those poets who are here, the competition is open for 2022. And the theme is stigma. You have until tomorrow to submit. So submit. Querida con mi familia borinqueña, tan grande que cada fiesta es una ocasión de comida, amistades y familia. Big gatherings of generations and generations that reach back to the motherland with the traditions of standard foods for every day. Aguacate, tostones, arroz, carne, ensalada. During celebrations, visiting family, you could count on special things. When Abuelita brought out the huge caldero to make a massive pot of arroz con gandules. Pascua meant ensalada de bacalao, spring goodness of root vegetables, onions, eggs, and salted codfish. Caliente o frío, with every comfort food spoonful. Other occasions, bautizos, Nochebuena, New Year's Eve, Dia de los Reyes, brought the truly great things. Arroz con dulce, pernil, arroz con gandules, más y más arroz con gandules, flan, and my favorite, pasteles. Making pasteles was a family affair long into the night, a production line of aromas and textures, a marathon of Valentine. Stacked stations of unrelated things became the steps to a family experience. Hours and hours after the slow roasted pork fell apart, boiled, seasoned, mashed vegetables to make the masa. Another seeds turned to achotina for its rich tan color. Olives green. Fingertips blackened and orange by the labor of love. Those once unique bits turned into structured stacks of freezer-ready goodness. Dozens and dozens of stacks. Because you couldn't just make one or two. No. Oh no. This effort meant commitment, dedication, and drive until at least one of the big, passed down, well-worn calderos with a story of its own and its own history is scraped to the very bottom, signaling the chance to sample the family food effort and how close La Familia truly is when cutting the twine, pulled out of hot water, stinging fingertips. No pause until flipped out onto a plate covered in picante, ketchup, or nothing at all. And then to dig into it with laughter and the appetite for family connection. Thank you. So thank you everyone. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
So let's keep it tight until Danny gets up here on stage. Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was terrific. Let's hear it again. Now, Rosa, you could have dropped the mic. I'm glad you didn't. That was really terrific. I do want to tell you that today's event is part one of a 2-Sunday event. Next Sunday, same time, same station, same place. We've got Something New Jersey Part 2, and we'll be hearing from and seeing Reggie Gaines, Megasood, and Frank Messina. So you're all welcome to come here live, but also to tune in on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. It's my great pleasure to introduce the next poet. Called Another Classic New Jersey Bard, and that means something, by the late Allen Ginsberg, Eliot Katz is the author of 7 books of poetry, including Love, War, Fire, Wind, and Unlocking the Exits, as well as a prose book, The Poetry and Politics of Allen Ginsberg. His most recent poetry book was a free PDF volume posted on his website before the 2020 presidential election, entitled President Predator, Poems to Help Make America Trump Free Again. I say amen to that. He was co-founder, along with me, of the long-running Long Shot Literary Magazine, and was co-editor with Allen Ginsberg and Andy Clausen of Poems for the Nation. Katz, whose late mother was a Holocaust survivor, has worked for many years as an activist for a wide range of peace and social justice causes, including helping to create several housing and food programs for homeless families in central Jersey that remain ongoing to this day. He currently lives in Hoboken, right about there. And his website is basically eliotkatzpoetry.com. Let's have a warm round of welcoming applause for Eliot Katz.
Is there a mic stand at all?
Sure. There's also the plexi here.
I'm not gonna use it.
We will make the mic stand thing happen.
Help my post-surgery
Is this good?
I think so.
He's
Yeah.
tall.
That's fine. I'll adjust it. Yeah. That's. Hi, everyone. Thank you.
Hey, Eliot.
Thank you, Dan. Only Danny could get me out for reading right now, but I'm going to. It's a pleasure to be here. Let me say, at the Hoboken Historical Museum, where I've read a bunch of times, and where Bob Foster, who runs it, is a friend of mine who I used to play table tennis with. So.
It'll happen again.
I'm not sure I can keep playing, but I had surgery on my neck since the last time we played, so that may stop me. But it's a pleasure to be here and to be celebrating New Jersey poetry. There are some people here who I don't think have seen me before, and some people who have seen me too many times before. So I'm going to read a mix of old and new poems, and I'm going to start with a section of a poem by Allen Ginsberg, who, as Danny mentioned, I wrote a book about his poetry and politics, and he was a one-time teacher of mine at the Roper Institute in Boulder, Colorado in 1980, and a longtime friend until his death in 1997. And it's actually, he died on April 5th, 1997, so I'm reading this poem 2 days before the 25th anniversary of his passing. So, and what I'm going to read is a short section of a longer poem called Plutonian Ode, which was a poem where he used kind of a Blakey mythical style to explore the dangers of nuclear weapons and nuclear power, nuclear energy plants, which has a renewed relevance today after the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the dangers both of the possibility of nuclear weapons being used and of a missile hitting one of Ukraine's 14 nuclear power plants. And there's even already been a few near misses with Chernobyl and another plant. But this is part 3 of Plutonian Ode, which also speaks to poets to come. Plutonian Ode, part 3. This ode to you, O poets and orators to come, you, Father Whitman, as I join your side, you, Congress and American people, you, present meditators, spiritual friends and teachers, you, O master of the diamond arts, take this wheel of syllables in hand, these vowels and consonants to breath's end. Take this inhalation of black poison to your heart. Breathe out this blessing from your breast on our creation. Forests, cities, oceans, deserts, rocky flats, and mountains in the 10 directions pacify with exhalation. Enrich this Plutonian ode to explode its empty thunder through earthen thought worlds. Magnetize this howl with heartless compassion. Destroy this mountain of plutonium with ordinary mind and body speech. Thus empower this mind guard, spirit gone out, gone beyond. gone beyond me. Wake space, so
Right.
And I'm gonna do my share, my part of the reading. I'm gonna start with an old New Jersey poem and end with a new New Jersey poem. So the old one, which some of you have heard too many times, hopefully some of you haven't yet, is called To the Vegetable Aisle. Under refrigerated water spray, all looks healthy. Romaine, red and green, Boston bib, watercress. How choose a lettuce? How to know which of you has natural soil's nutrients intact? Hey, arugula, why haven't I seen you here before? Who let these prepackaged sick leaves in the door? There's plenty of broccoli bunches, no ketchup. At least the Reagan Bush era is over. Which squash has more vitamin A, spaghetti or butternut? Would one of you please raise your label? Speak up. Which of you have been microwaved? Who here likes creamy Italian? Who's not afraid of the juicer's steel blades? Brussels sprouts and red cabbage, settle your price wars peacefully. Chestnuts, are you a vegetable now? Ah, tofu, or tempeh. You are the cure for famine and carnivorism. No wonder U.S. wants your French soybean subsidies cut. How juicy these ripe New Jersey tomatoes, lulling me for an illusory moment. This really could be a garden state. Wait a minute now. Why isn't this aisle as well lit as the candy bar section? Why a Mars bar cheaper than a bag of spinach? Doesn't it cost more to grow a candy bar? When a 6-year-old child, I remember watching a professional wrestler described as having a cauliflower ear. Cauliflower, it was 20 years before I could look at you again. Actually, for a long time in childhood, I refused to eat vegetables. It was a way of rebelling, I think. Later, I substituted alcohol for not eating vegetables. Now I welcome you, radical and mostly sober, escarole and chicory, now kale, now garlic, red peppers and parsley, peas and green beans. Who will protect you from being canned and frozen to death? Without values of internationalism and democratic accountability in all public institutions, who will safeguard the diversity? Who protect us from irradiation and pesticide? Who will assure the right to organize? Who sets transnational standards of minimum wage, eco-health, and safe working conditions? Who will make sure hyper-technology doesn't take over? After a right-wing tide, who will remineralize your soil? Who will assure access to your aisle for all? Who will apologize for bumping my cart into shoppers while writing this poem? Sleep tight. Don't let the virus or bacteria bite. Feed the struggle for another night. My partner Vivian, thank you. My partner Vivian worked over 20 summers as a fire lookout in the Canadian Rockies boreal forest. And this is a poem that I wrote one summer while visiting her. Thinking about emptiness from North America's skull. Her mountain she worked on was called Nose Mountain because it looked like a skull with a nose when you were flying in by helicopter. Over the horizon bright, jagged bolts of white lightning are thrown like javelins from the top of the continent. Where are they landing? Nowhere. Who is throwing those electrified spears? No one. Outside the cabin window after the storm, the tops of some of the mountain's evergreen trees have become a dirty orange, as if they were ever orange trees. I wonder what natural processes or acts of industry have turned the tops of these trees orange. Is industry a part of nature's course? From the edge of the mountain, I see dozens of oil rigs dot the landscape. Even 3 or 4 years ago, I could only see 1 or 2. What license from the galaxy could give oil and gas companies the right to despoil Canada's boreal forest? Could a business contract really give that right? Who will stop the logging industry's ever-widening clear cuts? Is it possible that trees exploit us like this in another universe? At 11 p.m., the sun has gone down and the treetops look green again. What kept me from seeing what was there? What in this cabin window creates illusion? With record-breaking heat, the fire lookouts are on extreme hazard all week. They are calling smoke locations into the radio all day and through the night. Are there really other human beings listening at the other end of the radio? Who heard Vivian call in that smoky ridge? If she didn't see it, would anybody else? On the FM radio, I listen to local gossip. No war talk. The disaster in Iraq must be over up here. For global warming, the locals know it's past the tipping point. At midnight, it finally gets dark. Soon, all appearances will vanish. Good night, Vivian. Good night, Eliot. With luck, we'll all meet again in the morning. And as Danny mentioned, before the 2020 election, I posted a free PDF volume of anti-Trump poems on my website. And I'm going to read one of them now. Here's hoping that Trump is either not allowed to run again in 2024 or at least doesn't win. But this poem is called, Whose Side Is God On? In an attempt to keep his evangelical Christian voters, Donald Trump says that Joe Biden winning the presidency would hurt God. Do evangelical voters really believe that a 77-year-old guy, obviously past his physical prime, could injure a being they consider omniscient and omnipotent? What did Trump's evangelical voters think of Trump's implying such divine weakness? Or when he had peaceful protesters across the street from the White House, tear gassed and hit with batons so that Trump could stroll over and hold up a Bible upside down in front of an historic church? Does God approve of tear gassing peaceful protesters? Or of a sociopathic politician holding up a Bible that wasn't even his own for a quick publicity photo? As Trump argues for the risk of fraud when it comes to mail-in voting, except in Florida where he knows he will need the mail-in vote, would God vote in person if he or she could during a highly contagious pandemic? The vice columnist E. Jean Carroll has just won a New York court case allowing her to proceed with her civil suit against Trump for rape. Do religious Christians really believe that Jesus would approve of a candidate accused by dozens of women of a range of sexual assaults from self-admitted groping to rape? Everything I've read in the Old and New Testaments, from the Golden Rule to Jesus' preaching of compassion and mercy, argues against the malicious selfishness of Trumpian right-wing policies, whether economic, ecological, or racist, or when it comes to his desire to build a new generation of Earth-destructive nukes. As a longtime atheist, I believe that I know what God would want better than most evangelicals. And it's sure as hell or no hell isn't Trump. And now we go to a couple of poems dealing with Ukraine. This is called Putin's Sharp Teeth. Putin has spent decades sharpening his teeth with gold-plated nail files, with electric sandpaper, with the jagged edges of Siberian ice, with polluted rain clouds that have come down in the wrong shape, with badly manufactured nuclear missile tips, with the cut-out tongues of corner-square protesters and mediocre poets, with the hockey sticks of teams that did not win Olympic medals, with 2 of Garry Kasparov's cracked nights, with saved scraps of Stalin's mummified beard, with the fins of killer sharks that he has out-wrestled himself in the Caspian Sea, with 1,000 fountain pens ripped from broken journalists' fingers, with steel-toed boots that he has used to stomp on his internet critics, with the ashes of burnt dystopian books, with a pair of Donald Rumsfeld leftover Empire-style Iraq War eyeglasses, with all the rusty gold nuggets he could collect from his closest oligarch colleagues, with the rough wool of the Kremlin's winter COVID masks. Now that he has run out of in-country Russian tooth-sharpening tools, he has sent tanks and bombs into Ukraine to uncover differently shaped instruments. It's outrageous, the cruel things leaders can do when they don't believe their teeth are ever sharp enough. Very short one called Cable TV's Ukraine War Analysis. I wonder if it would be possible for CNN and MSNBC to find more US anti-war analysts opposed to Russia's illegal and immoral invasion of the sovereign country of Ukraine, who are not also generals, intelligence agents, or congresspersons that supported or orchestrated the unwarranted US invasion of Iraq. And I'm going to do 2 more. This one was a poem I wrote that kind of is relevant now to the current war, but I wrote it in the run-up to the Iraq War. It's called, "Can We Have Some Peace and Quiet, Please?" The belligerent voices are yelling in the streets and on the radios, calling for the big bombs of peace to fall. The smart bombs, the bombs that have passed their college entrance exams. It's Orwellian the way everyone claims Orwell for their side. These days, everyone is fighting on behalf of Orwell and God. Years ago, Don Rumsfeld and Saddam Hussein met in the corner and exchanged secret diplomatic handshakes. It is only after peaceful gestures like these that the missiles can fly. In the meantime, the time between the world mean as is and the world we mean to become, the endless rains are Yehuda Amakai's tears, watching men still violently beating their swords into plowshares and then back into rifles and remote control fighter planes. On the corner of Spring Street and Broadway, a taxicab driver threw a baby lamb out the passenger side window. Everyone in a 2-block radius ran away screaming. In New York City, the yelling is so loud and the quiet so quiet that everyone I know just below the surface is scared out their wits, knowing the violence these days that can follow an apparent peace. They are calling senators with empathetic American voices, urging earthly generosity and kindness, which the corporate media and our elected leaders interpret as a vote for preemptive strikes. The next century's gods have not yet been born, and the last centuries are no longer able to show a child the simple magic trick of pulling its fingers away from a newly lit flame. And I'm going to end with a little slightly longer new poem. It's a New Jersey poem, but it's about a past New Jersey experience. And I'm going to dedicate this one today to my friend Danny, who is the biggest Mets fan I know, although I know there's also going to be a Mets poet next week. It'll take a little while to get to the Mets part of this poem, but memoirs are so popular these days, more than even novels, that I thought I would write some memoir poems. So this is called Memoir Poem, Poets and Musicians from Eiswinkel. For the night of October 25th, 1986, I had organized a benefit cultural event in New Brunswick, New Jersey, Poets and Musicians from Eiswinkel. David Meiswinkel is running for election in a few weeks against the longtime corrupt Democratic Party machine mayor John Lynch, who years later would spend 3 years in prison for accepting a bribe. The event would feature a few local New Brunswick poets and bands and was going to be held at a local bar called Chicks Inn, a space that didn't host many live cultural events. The reason we were doing the event at Chicks Inn was because other town venues were afraid to openly challenge Lynch. A few years earlier, the Court Tavern, the town's main live music space, which was a little bit like Maxwell's up here, had hosted a show to oppose Lynch, and weeks later, the town's building inspector ordered the bar to install a replacement $10,000 sprinkler system, or the bar would be permanently shut down. We knew how serious in its vengeance the Lynch family could be because John Lynch's brother-in-law had pled guilty to committing the state's major 1980s mob hit, shooting a major figure of a rival mob family close range in a car, and then dumping the body in the Hudson River in Hoboken. Chicks Inn's owner was a distant cousin of John Lynch, and rumored to hate his cousin. As distant family, he wasn't worried about harm for opposing Lynch. The day of the 1986 benefit, there was a small picture of me in the art section of the local daily paper, the Home News, with a caption describing me as the organizer of the night's event. I walked up French Street toward Chicks Inn a little early that evening so that I could help set up and make sure performers would know the order for the night. As I was walking on the sidewalk toward the inn, a police car pulled over and stopped right next to me. The cop on the passenger side opened his window and said loudly, "That looks like him." And he yelled at me to get into the car. I was not quite 30 yet and was not confident yet about my legal rights. So I did as asked and got into the back seat of the police car, wondering what they could possibly think they were doing. When I sat down and closed the door, the driver cop asked me, "Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" I asked him. "We saw your picture in the paper. Why are you organizing an event against the mayor?" I was quiet for a few seconds, thinking about how I should answer, and surprised that I could possibly have been pulled into a police car for running a poetry and music event. But it wasn't a complete surprise, because months earlier, I had been arrested as part of a legal free expression sit-in on the lawn of New Brunswick City Hall to protest the town's planned closing of its only homeless shelter, with Lynch's intention to replace the shelter with a transportation museum. The mayor's idea of trying to force its homeless population, increased because of the city's gentrification policies, to move to other nearby towns. After a few seconds, I came up with an answer. "Look, I'm the son of a Holocaust survivor. My mother spent a year in 3 Nazi concentration camps, including Auschwitz, where she lost her parents and most of her siblings in the gas chambers. Some months ago, I was arrested during what should have been seen as a legal First Amendment protest at City Hall against John Lynch's plan to close the only homeless shelter in town. As the son of a Holocaust survivor, I don't like to see injustice or to see vulnerable people treated badly. And I think Mayor Lynch has been terrible when it comes to issues of social justice and fairness. I don't know whether that will make sense to you, but I realize now that I don't think you had any right to bring me into this car. So I'm going to leave now and keep walking to the venue where I'm organizing tonight's event. A venue that I think you know is owned by Lynch's cousin." I opened the police car door and stepped out and continued walking up French Street. I didn't look back to see whether the police had tried to respond or follow me, but they didn't pull over next to me again. And I doubt whether they would have filed any record of having pulled me into the car. When I got to Chicks Inn, I started hoping to set up the event, going over the performing order with a sound person. At that point, the one thing I was worried about was whether many people would show up. The poets and bands on the bill had decent followings, but there was a schedule conflict that night that I could not have predicted when I talked with the bar a month earlier to come up with a date. That same night was Game 6 of baseball's World Series between the New York Mets and Boston Red Sox. And I was guessing that there were a lot of Mets fans living in New Brunswick. Luckily, Chicks Inn had 2 rooms, a back room with a small bar where our event was going to take place, and a front room with a main bar that had a TV. I hope even people interested in watching the World Series will come to our benefit event and maybe step into the other room occasionally if they wanted to check in on how the World Series was going, with the Mets then down 3-2. As for me, I was interested in the game, but more interested in politics, and I was probably not going to be able to watch the game at all. Although John Lynch won his mayoral re-election that year, our cultural benefit was successful with about 100 attending, which was about as many as the room could fit. All these years later, I don't remember everything about the performances, including my own poetry reading that night. But I do remember that attendees seemed to have fun, and that we raised some money and signed up a number of people to work on the My Legal campaign on election day. And I remember that when the event was over, I was finally able to go into the front room at Chicks Inn to see what was happening in Game 6, if it wasn't already over. It wasn't. I looked up at the screen and tried to figure out what was happening. It was difficult for me to be sure, but it seemed to be the bottom of the 10th inning, and the game was either tied or maybe the Mets were down by 1 run. The Mets center fielder, Mookie Wilson, was the first batter up that I was able to see when I walked into the room with the TV. He hit a slow ground ball to first base, and people in the room groaned. But then something happened that I do remember to this day, even though I can't remember the performance details of the night. Mookie Wilson's easy ground ball to first base went right through the Red Sox first baseman Bill Buckner's legs. And the winning run came in to score, with the Mets tying up the series, which they would then go on to win in Game 7. The 1986 mayoral campaign isn't remembered by many people anymore, and is surely not recorded in many history books. The Mookie Wilson ground ball and Bill Buckner's flaw are etched into universal baseball lore.
Thank you, Eliot. I only wish that my time spent in the back of the New Brunswick police car went as smoothly as yours. When we were promoting the event on Facebook, or maybe it was Instagram, somebody commented, shouldn't you say the legendary Eliot Katz? So let's hear it one more time for the legendary Eliot Katz. Tamara, do you want the mic stand or? Okay, then I will leave it here for you. So, let me tell you about our next poet. Tamara Zbrizher is a Ukrainian American poet. She received her MFA at Drew University and is currently pursuing her doctoral degree. Her work has been published in various journals and anthology and has been nominated for a Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net. She is the recipient of the 2021 New Jersey Poets Prize. Her first full-length collection, Tell Me Something Good, I feel like singing that, was released from Get Fresh Books in 2019. She lives in New Jersey with her son and has recently purchased binoculars to more efficiently creep on the birds outside her window. I look really forward to hearing Tamara. Let's have a nice round of applause for her.
Hello, thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited. The space is beautiful. Thank you to the readers before me. Beautiful work. I think I'm going to read my tribute poem in the middle of my own because I think they kind of have they're in conversation. Okay. Hi, Internet. Okay, I'm going to start from one from my book. This is kind of like a dialogue poem. It's a short one. Driving Mama home from work. I'm tired, she says. Time to retire. Me too, I say. You're young still. Young but unlucky in love. You need a man who has love for me? No, mercy. Mama, we're not in Ukraine anymore. Toma, we're women anywhere we go. So I took her advice. This one is called, What Do You Do on the Day of Your Divorce? You go to Walmart to buy an air conditioner, but they're out. It's a heat wave. The world is shifting into heat. So you shift too and buy a grill, your first one. Charcoal and small, a scrubber and a basting brush, a long layer too. You salivate in line thinking about all the burgers you're gonna cook up. You'll start saying things like cook up and throw that puppy on. Then remember you gave up meat weeks ago and anyways have no idea how a grill works. Your friend says, that's what I have him for, meaning her husband who's still her husband and not the past. But there isn't anyone here. So you search YouTube, listen to these good old barbecued boys blustering on about kindling and lighter fluid, and a fire so hot, it turns all raw things done, well and done. You tell your friend, I can do it if they can. If they can. That is how I learned to ride, you say. From behind his back, I watched him take the turn slowly, at first slowly, then gave it gas quickly. Watched as he opened the engine, watched him rip through the Arizona desert, the highlands, Florida swamps. I watched him shift gears, watched him check the side mirrors, watched him ride the clutch only once, a single tear in 3 years. Watched him back the beast up perfectly into an impossible spot. Watched him pile up dishes, then socks, then silence. Watched him father from a distance. Watched him rip through our home like a highway with no speed limit. I was scared at first, I was scared. So much power, so much weight, so much wild for one woman to wield. I rode the bike slowly, at first slowly. I rode the clutch a lot. I rode the bike slowly at first, then faster, down crooked hills. I rode the bike because I never again wanted to watch a road unfold from behind anyone. On the day of your divorce, you spark the grill up. First the cardboard, then kindling, then charcoal, you light it all up. The flame is small, at first it is small, then thicker, fuller, steadier, until the heat's an open engine faster than the senses. Like how motion is rendered new when the beast purrs between your thighs until it is inside you. You are the beast, your own body carrying itself farther than you could ever have imagined. So most of these poems are pretty new. I'm still working on them. Like this one, new and strange. Squatting atop this city is a lonely way to spend the evening, wouldn't you say, Batman? What's he doing on the roof anyway? I always thought that he was watching for crime, but let's be honest, what can he see from all the way up that high? Squatting always, his glutes must be tight. Maybe this is where he works out, and the comic panel or the camera's frame happens to capture him always on leg day. I used to love Batman, but now he just makes me sad, because I think he's really sad. I wonder why we push so hard to make our superheroes sad. Realistic, we say, but what we mean is sad, because reality is sad. Like when I'm on the playground with my son and catch a glimpse of another mother with her child, playing and laughing and doing what mothers are supposed to do. And we lock eyes, and the loneliness in hers mirrors the loneliness in mine, only for a moment. That's all we allow ourselves of loneliness, before we return each to our love, our obligation. And Batman, can't he be the hero we want and not need? One who never works out, one who never mourns, one who never wonders if he can have it all, one who never squats atop his whole damn city, loving something so much, but knowing there isn't a home in it for him. Okay. A sonnet in which I am in the bathtub on a Friday night, examining my legs and thinking I should have taken them out on the town, instead of soaking post-eating 3 Cadbury eggs, even if they were on sale post-Easter, and have melted into a sticky puddle inside the cabinet after I hid them from my kid, but forgot. And lo, they were resurrected when I opened the drawer to steal some of his bubbles. I swear, this is not the parable of a shitty mother. I'm saving him from cavities and bought the bubbles, so they're mine by rules of commerce. Still, what would Jesus say? What would my Jewish mother? I'm tempted to make a joke how she'd forgive the betrayal as long as they were on sale, or if you'd work as hard on finding a husband as separating the wrapper from the chocolate. Come on, from your mouth to God's ears. But if you could only taste the sweetness of this solitude, in this bathtub, this sanctity, I swear I'm not parabolic. I'm gonna shift gears a little bit in my poems. I'm gonna start by reading one of Marina Carrera's poems. She was supposed to be reading today, but I replaced her graciously and gratefully. This is her new book. It just came out last month from Kevin Carey Press, and it is beautiful. It's one long love poem. It's one long orgasm, this book. I really love the way that she explores sexuality and love. I strongly suggest you pick it up. So I'm going to start with her opening poem called Tanto Tanto. Despite the free online chakra test I took in 2013, declaring my heart chakra completely closed and in need of healing, I'm pretty sure that tuna sandwich you made me for lunch today opened that bitch right up. At least stuck a rock at the foot of the door so that all the glorious light you hold between your teeth filters through. And fight or flight becomes not so much my mantra, but a little ditty I hum on my way to work in the morning. You know I'm a sucker for a button-up, so when you come to me like the most handsome tulip, I'm finally the girl who got her dream boat toward the horizon, Hurston and sang up. I love you tanto tanto, that sometimes the only thing I do is holding myself together like a woman with too many bags and not enough groceries. Count the minutes till we can flee to Canada, the hours till our daughters and their bodies are safe in every space. The day all my chakras align and I can open abundantly, astrally, divinely, and Dimash. So the last few poems, I guess, I really love and am inspired by the way that Marina explores love and sexuality and holiness in the same space. So this is my version of that. The clavicle, the wolf, the hunger. My clavicle throbs. A bruise is blooming where your arm pushed heavy into me. You were pushing your way inside tenderly. I finger the ache throughout the day, loving a reminder of this way we lose ourselves. Like the wolf in the stories in the night loses itself on a chicken's throat. Without remorse, for there is no shame in hunger. I spread my fingers across the peaks of your collarbone, grasp your throat, which never sees what's coming under a woodsman's beard. I cannot see how you choose to return to this life, to me, breath by breath. So I listen with my hands to the survival song your skin sings under my grip. When you are asleep, I finger the coarse hair and dream of cutting it off clean. Don't think me, Delilah. Think of my grandmother's bony fingers brushing the bangs off my forehead, the better to see me with. Not like the big bad wolf, but yes, animal, who returns to what nourishes it and wants to swallow it whole, lick clean at each bone so as not dare waste a single morsel. Okay. And this is a poem about unrequited, unrequited love, or the roles that we set up and these kinds of like performances that we set up for ourselves and that we keep falling into them over and over again. At least I do. Yeah. And it has the word musicien in it, which is a set of a play, like a physical set of a play. It's in French because I'm really fancy. So just in case you didn't know. And it also mentions Miley Cyrus. And if you don't know who she is, I don't know where you've been in the last 10 years. No one can be blamed for loving, unless the love is a wrecking ball to the delicate musicienne of another love. I don't want to be a Miley Cyrus song or Miley Cyrus. How difficult it must be to build a love when you are playing the part of a wrecking ball. But here I am, a regular Hannah Montana, coming in round and heavy. Can you blame me? When we both want to live inside that one Otis song, build a whole love inside these arms. Though I don't know if it's a good sign or a bad omen that I didn't tell you about the grammar incongruency that wrecked the song for me. Yearning from wanting you, as in the act of yearning in the opposite direction, as in toward another yearning, which is to say, loving the way we do is living in the from, which is to say, distance always. There's a linchpin in every fantasy, like in plays when you catch a glimpse of an actor backstage, shoulders dropped, stance loosened, breath heavy. They stop being Hamlet or Hamilton, remembering their own body, and suddenly you are acutely aware of your own ass in the seat. Cramped legs, and the grand theater becomes a room curated to induce romance. That's the issue with manufactured plots. They only take you as far as you let them. I want to let you slide your hand down my arm and farther, but won't. I've seen enough tragedies to predict this ending. So I leave it at the folded fortune cookie fortune I tucked into your wallet. This small part of me on paper with you at the grocery store, the office, online for coffee. On paper, this should be romantic enough to leave as an ending. But from the other side of the world, you send a photo with the fortune in your palm. These streets, you say, feel like a set of a play. I found a neighborhood you would love. On paper, that should be enough, but I'm back. The stage is set. It's too late to call it the Scottish play. Otis, these arms, let them wreck it all to hell. I'm trying to be, green and print on both sides, but now it's all like a hot mess. One or two?
One more.
All right, so I guess I'll end with a little bit of blasphemy, but a little bit of love as well. So this poem is for Jean Valentine, who was a wonderful poet. She passed away a few years ago, and she always wrestled with ideas of God in this really eloquent and beautiful way. And I read one of her poems, and I was like, oh, I'm always wrestling with God. Eliot. I'm an atheist, but I'm obsessed with religion. And I was like, well, I can write a poem about God. And then immediately Iggy Pop's "Now I Want to Be Your Dog" came into my head. And I was like, well, that's how I wrote this poem, so here it is. I'm still waiting for something to come down from a cloud and give me abs. Or at least a man with abs so hard, I feel like I'm finally touching the idea of a man. Full of brawn and protein, juiced up on those good roids, those good God roids, sweating just thinking about it. Sweating out toxins and toxic masculinity, sweating in God's own sweat. Better yet, now I want God himself, with abs so hard I can bounce wishes off of them. With abs so hard, they deflect, "Why aren't you smiling, baby?" And shame that inhabits a body like a soul should. I want a God with abs so washboardingly hard, you can wash the unwashed masses on them. Wash sin off this whole world, scrub it all clean. I want a God with abs like Iggy Pop's, but not the temper, not the angry God, not the God that makes himself bleed, not the God who bleeds for me without consent. I want a God with abs so hard, I get on all fours willingly. Now I want to be your dog, because finally a worthy master. I want a God who gets on all fours for me, for us, willingly, on all fours, howling so loud and so hard and so God-blessedly beautiful. No one would ever have to imagine their body as anything other than God. Thank you.
Oh God, now I have to stand here behind the podium holding my gut in after that poem. Thank you, poets. Thank you, Rescue Poetix, Eliot Katz, and Tamara Zbrizher. You really brought home the goods. I thank you for that. I'd also like to thank Ran Hoppy, who made this stream to the world out there. And I also want to thank Bob Foster, who keeps the ship going on here at the Hoboken Historical Museum. Thank you, Bob, for letting there be programs, both virtual and live. I'd like to end this with a poem by a great Puerto Rican, New Jersey poet. And I'll tell you a little bit about it. And I bet you some of you know this poem. About 100 years ago or so, doctors made house calls. And a man in Rutherford by the name of William Carlos Williams, who was a physician and a poet, was tending to Thaddeus Lloyd Marshall Sr., who was a fruit and vegetable peddler, originally from South Carolina, who had a 2.5-story house. Anyway, doctors made house calls. Marshall and his wife, Alice, raised 5 sons in that house, but he also raised chickens, and he happened to have a red wheelbarrow out back. Rutherford historian Rod Leap said it was during one of these house calls that Williams, who was a friend of Marshall, gazed out the window into the rain. And that moment gave rise to a poem simply titled 22. I'd like to believe it's because it was written in 1922, but I think it was just 22. Anyway, it's from a collection called Spring and All. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. Anyway, that was a New Jersey poet writing about what he saw literally outside the window, not too far from here. I want to thank everyone, people watching online, but most especially people sitting here. Thank you for turning out during these times. You're a wonderful audience. Thank you.
I'll just say thank you, Danny, for bringing quality poetry to the museum. You do a great thing. You bring in great people here. people probably don't associate a museum with poetry, but Danny does a great job. Just an applause for Danny. Hopefully you'll be here next Sunday where the poetry continues. And I should mention the museum is doing so many different activities. The best thing to do is to go on to the museum website, hobokenmuseum.org. We have vegan dinners, we have a historic bike ride, we have coffee festival. In fact, we're not doing any history. We're doing all these other things. We'll get back to history, but it's all important and great to see you inside the museum. And Danny has one more point to make.
This is an important point. This event was free, online and here, and I'm really grateful for that. But the museum always welcomes donations. There's a donation box back there. You don't have to give, but they're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to end the recording.